Hi there, this is Alicia with Falcone Family Farm, and today we're going to go over how to keep your goats quiet. So to be real with you, don't watch this video and think that if you follow these tips you're going to have completely quiet goats. It's possible, but if you're getting into goats, just know that that's something that they do. They're obnoxious, some more than others. But to help you out, here is some things that have helped us to help quiet them down, if not completely at times. Something that helps with your goats being quiet is just having a strict routine so they know exactly when to expect things. That way, if you are always feeding them at a particular time, then you might start hearing them just be noisy like an hour before it's feeding time and they know it's coming. And then that way, just kind of the rest of the day, they're quiet, they know nothing's coming. Something that we started doing is only feeding our goats one time a day. So just giving them their full day's worth of food just in the evening, sometimes even at night until when it's dark, because we noticed once it's dark, the goats are quiet. And so at one point we did wait until it was dark to start feeding the goats in that way. And it very much helped with keeping the goats quiet throughout the day because they know not to expect any food until just the last part of the day. If your goats are unusually quiet right out of the blue, just consider why they might be screaming. Are they out of water? Are they out of food? Is one of your does in heat? Because I know within does being in heat, that is a big one where our goats are usually fairly quiet, but if we hear one starting to scream the entire day, we know somebody's in heat. And so that oftentimes is the case, and there's not really anything you can do about that. It's just screaming for 2, maybe 3 days, and then they settle back down. That is also where you will hear the buck chime in too, and he'll either be making noise, or with us, oftentimes we hear the little spitting and stuff that they do in the background, and that's more entertaining, is hearing them spitting in the background at the girls. So if you got new goats or just got some new goats to add to your flock, they could just be adjusting because there's that period where everybody has to figure out who's in charge, the pecking order. So consider that, and I have noticed that younger goats also tend to be whinier as they mature. They kind of suck it up and are not quite as noisy, so that's something to consider as well. If you have your goats as pets and you're around them a lot and you spoil them, then yes, you've set yourself up for noisy goats, because then they begin to see you as part of their herd and they want to have you around, and they're going to be upset if you're not there. So I would say just kind of the best thing to do there, if you can, is to detach yourself a little bit from them. Maybe, again, with the schedule, set aside a certain time of day that you go out and you love on them and give them attention. So that's where I have is just kind of that healthy separation where they know I've got my own thing I've got to do, and then usually in the afternoons is when we'll come and get them and we'll go on a walk and just let them graze and stuff outside. So again, if you have pet goats, then they are going to see you as part of their flock and be attached to you. If you give your goats grain and treats, this ruins goats, which is why we stopped giving any grain, even for milking. Yes, there's a little bit of a drop in milk production, I'll still occasionally do treats, but I do ask for it in the end, because once they've had 1 or 2 days of treats, then they expect it and they'll start crying for it. And so if you're going to do grain or treats of any sorts, they're going to get noisy. Even my quietest goats will get noisy with grain. Just like a kid with candy, it becomes an obsession and they just want it all day. So if your goats are noisy and you can't stand it, maybe try that and not give them that stuff, except for maybe on a rare random occasion or something. Even then, even if it's like one time, I've seen that fail too. Sometimes I'm able to get away with it. Something else you can do is just keep them busy, because just like a dog that barks and barks and barks and barks, usually you correct that by getting them out and doing something that's more stimulating for them, like walking and getting their energy out. You think about it, and goats normally are out in pastures and they're more active and feeding and going to new parts of the pasture. If your goats are in a smaller area, that's boring. There's not much to do. And you know, not everybody's like me, where I do like to go and walk my goats. We have a 1.5 mile and a 2 mile loop that I can do with them, and they can go nibble on tree bark and go in the pastures, and they feel like they've traveled and done something. And I feel like that has helped with, you know, not only making them tired, but it brings mental satisfaction to them. And so I know I am unique in that, but you can also have new toys and stuff that you build for them in their area, new platforms to jump on. I do have a post on things you can do for your goats. I believe there was attaching a tetherball so they can knock that around. I'll find that post and I'll link it below on just DIY things you can do to kind of put in your goats thing and just make life a little bit more interesting for them. And I think it does help with this screaming. No homestead is complete without a tractor, and Kubota is the #1 selling subcompact tractor in the US of A. It's #1 rated for reliability under 100 HP tractors in the US, and #1 for durability and owner experience. It's great for landscaping, property maintenance, hobby farming, horses, and even snow removal. Just one tractor can be 16 different machines in one, with the different attachments that you can put on your tractor. A good tractor has always been a must-have for us on our homestead. If you think that it's something that you could benefit from too, there will be a link in the description below. Some goats are just straight up born to be loud. I have had goats that they've got food, they've got water, they have things to jump on, and this goat in particular we called her Epi. She was seemingly never happy. She would stand on a stump and she would just scream all day. Even though she had everything she needed and was with her herd mates, she'd just sit there and scream, and she had one of those more obnoxious voices. And finally my husband could not take it anymore, and we ended up selling her to a family who also had another pet weather goat. And when I did check on her later, they're just like, yeah, she's kind of loud. So some goats, they're born to be loud, and that's where it's like, are you willing to deal with that, or do you want to remove them from the flock? Something you don't want to do is be aggressive to your goats at all, even in the simplest of ways of, like, say, a squirt gun, or just kind of bluff charging them, or just anything that's going to freak them out, because it's not going to work. It's not going to work. If they're going to be noisy, they're going to be noisy, and doing anything to try and spook them into being quiet, they're just going to be spooky of you, and then they're going to continue to make noise. So it does not work. One of the final tips that we've done is quiet time. Again, this is probably going to be a unique one, but there's been times, especially when it's breeding season, or, you know, this is something we've done mainly with the bucks, but I don't always bring my bucks with me on the walks for obvious reasons. I don't want them, if I have a doe in heat, them breeding the doe, or they're just more stubborn and not as pleasant to walk as the does. And so I'll leave them home, and then you got a buck that's screaming his head off and my husband can't take it. So something we have done since we've caught the shipping containers with a dog kennel in it is gone and done quiet time with them, where they just go and get put away for a little bit, and just kind of being in a dark place like that, they're quiet, and it gives my husband a break. And then as soon as I'm back and I put the does away, go fetch the buck, and he comes over nice and casual, so it's less stress on him, because when I go with the does, that buck would scream the entire time I'm gone. The entire hour and a half that I'm gone, you'd have a buck screaming and freaking out. And just putting him away in a kind of a quiet, dark place, he just would settle down and not stress out. So, and then, yeah, like I said, we come back with the does, I go fetch the buck, he comes back nice and calm and goes back into his area. So, kind of an unusual tip, but if you're desperate, then that's something you can try. Hopefully those tips and tricks are helpful for you, and you find something that helps you guys out. Something that I had, you know, again, just goats are noisy. That's something that you need to expect if you're going to have goats. Something I've noticed is it doesn't matter how big a flock that I have, there's always one goat that just has to be noisy, or when it's around feeding time has to make noise, Because if we, I've had experience where we get rid of a goat and then a goat that was completely quiet before that we kept suddenly pipes in and gets loud, and then if that goat is removed and gone, somebody else pipes in. Even my sweet girl Roka, who is the quietest goat ever and never makes a peep, when we had to downsize this year down to her and her daughter, suddenly she became noisy and just had to make things known. So there's always one. There's always at least one in the flock. That's something that I've noticed. So, but as far as your whole flock being noisy, those tips should help bring down the noise level some. So, and where you just gotta straight up expect noise is if you are breeding goats and you have does dropping kids and it's milking season. Like, that is just a season for noise. Just know that. But that about does it for this video, and we will see you in the next one.